Republic appeared to be an African success story, building on a colonial legacy, natural resources, and a happy, hard-working population. A beautiful country, it potentially had everything. It was indeed a paradise. Then it all went wrong.
And they're also based on top of the trucks. The big problem is the looters and not the forces of either side.
This tragic story concerns three men. Former President Siad Barre nearly brought peace and prosperity to Somalia. But through bad mistakes, conflicting ideologies, and the importing of vast amounts of military hardware, his legacy is devastation. This is Ali Mahdi, in charge only of the north of the divided capital, Mogadishu, with his faction, the Manifesto Group. He is not recognized outside this area, having been appointed interim president by a supposedly unconstitutional coalition in Djibouti during a power vacuum in the civil war. Strangely, his Manifesto Group proclaims to be part of the United Somali Congress, the leader of which he's primarily in bloody contention with. General Mohammed Farah Aidid. He controls the southern part of the city, Mogadishu. Funded by the then ruler of neighbouring Ethiopia, he couldn't completely overthrow President Siad Barre, Ali Mahdi, or the northern clans, so destroyed as much infrastructure as possible out of spite. For a long period, he held relief agencies and the United Nations in thrall. These three hostile men have caused Somalia's descent into anarchy, devastation and starvation. But why did it happen? To understand that, Somalia's past must be looked at for the clues that mirror its present. Although used to clan rivalry, border disputes, drought and occasional famine, by the mid-1970s the Somali Democratic Republic seemed close to conquering them all. Under its authoritarian president, Siad Barre, the country appeared to have wealth, progressive infrastructure, adequate food, and a high standard of education and medication. Strategically situated on the Horn of Africa, it was being wooed by the Soviet Union, China, and the USA. The enterprising Somali population, a beautiful race descended from Arabs and North Africans, were quick to turn this aid into progress, for although mostly nomadic, they were good at business and adapting to new ways. In the late 19th century, the capital Mogadishu, its name meaning seat of the Shah in ancient Persian, was being considered by the colonial powers. They all had designs on this region, commanding the southern approaches to the Suez Canal and important sea routes along the east coast of Africa. It was an easy takeover, for the Somali elders were happy to recommend being under the protection of any nation offering friendship, a characteristic which would one day prove a destructive cocktail. The Italians were the most avaricious. Since the late 19th century, they had been racing to incorporate the whole Horn of Africa in one big colony. Eritrea was already under their influence. However, France took the northwest around Djibouti, Britain the north, and the Italians the south, by far the biggest and most productive part. So southern Somalis learnt Italian, and Italian commercial, legal and political practices, and in the north they learnt English and adopted British practices. A Somali's first loyalty is to his sub-clan, then his clan, the basis of Somali culture, and these allegiances run deep. Minor disputes, once settled with clubs and spears, would assume horrific proportions with the introduction of modern automatic weapons. To the west, the nominally Christian Ethiopian Empire also had its eyes on Somaliland. They took over the Ogaden and Howd regions, which the Somalis considered their own. The dispute over these regions angered and intimidated future President Siad Barre. It would ultimately destroy Somalia. But anti-colonial rumblings had started long before his birth, and being a Muslim country, it was religion which started them in 1898. Mohammed Abdullah Hassan, dubbed the Mad Mullah by the British troops, declared a jihad against the Christian invaders from Europe and Ethiopia. A master tactician, he could not be defeated. He died in the influenza epidemic of 1920, shortly after British bombers destroyed his fort at Tele. The dream of a united Somalia temporarily died with him. With Somali resistance broken, the Italians developed plantations around the only two areas where there are permanent rivers, the valleys of the Shebele and the Juba. Vast quantities of bananas, sugar and cotton were soon being exported to Italy under preferential financial deals. By the 1970s, bananas alone contributed 35% of Italian Somaliland's export earnings. The British, however, were less inclined to invest in a protectorate which they saw mainly as a source of food for their more important garrison across the straits in Aden. In August 1940, the Italians captured British Somaliland, but 7 months later, Commonwealth forces retook the territory, gaining Italian Somaliland, the Howd, and the Ogaden in the process. Most of the nation was now united, even if under the British. A regenerated mood of national awareness was soon disappointed. Once again, the Ogaden was the cause. Ernest Bevin, the British Labour Foreign Secretary, wanted Somalia to remain united, under the British, of course. Emperor Haile Selassie, not unsurprisingly, demanded in 1949 that the area be returned to Ethiopia. The US, wanting a base in Eritrea, agreed. The UK gave the region back, and the UN ruled that Italian Somaliland be placed under a UN trusteeship for 10 more years, administered by Italy. Somalia was once again divided. The UN were to play another indeterminate role in Somalia over 40 years later. In 1960, the two colonies became independent, and on the 1st of July that year, united to become the Republic of Somalia. At last, there was a prospect of a united, prosperous country, run by the Somalis themselves. But many Somalis had divided loyalties between clans, generations, and colonial influences. The armies marched differently. The legal and commercial procedures differed. And what would the official language be? Not Somali, there was no alphabet. English, Arabic, or Italian? The first president, Adan Abdul Osman, and his prime minister, Abdul Rashid Ali Sharmake, began to lay the framework for what would become a successful democracy.
It worked. Why it worked is because people felt that the politicians can be changed through multi-party system. So in fact the people, or I should say not the people who matter in the towns, who know what politics is, felt that through this political party they can change any leader they want.
Meanwhile, a little-known army commander named Mohammed Siad Barre was becoming influential.
Siad Barre, I think, with all certainty I can say, felt that he was the reincarnation of Muhammad Abdullah Hassan. Absolute reincarnation.